This morning in Higher Learning, in the world of big-time college sports, what happens on the athletic field can become more of a priority than what's going on in the classroom. Last week, the NCAAs held their annual convention in Atlanta and heard some tough words from the U.S. Education Secretary. Here to talk about what's going on there and some policy changes being proposed to protect student athletes is Peter Kerwin from the Rhode Island Higher Education Assistance Authority. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. How are you?
Good to see you. Good to see you. Let's be honest. It's no real shock if you're a giant college athlete, you're treated like a rock star.
Yeah.
Going to class isn't always a top priority. What did Secretary Duncan tell us about?
Well, basically, he's talking about instituting some reforms to restore the balance between academics and athletics. I mean, this is the time of year when we start to hear a lot of the stories about, especially college football, coaches leaving, going to another school, and leaving those recruits who they had promised, to get through, well, I'm going to coach you up and I'm going to get you to the pros. Well, all of a sudden, they're left behind, because there's a new coach coming in and there's disorganization in the program. I mean, on the basketball front, you've got all of these kids, being recruited as early as 8th grade, and with the NCAA basketball rules, if you're 19 and a year out of high school, you're eligible for the NBA draft. So
a lot of these guys are just using it as a springboard. So
exactly. Educators get worried that it's just a stepping stone, and that if your pro career doesn't turn out, you're left with no education because you left as in your sophomore year. So it's a really tough situation.
Is that the main concern here for student athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. And also on the football front, we've seen some of those situations where you've had 3 big-name coaches were fired within the last 2 months for physically or verbally abusing students. So, I mean, you leave people wondering, what's going on in these programs. So, Secretary Duncan kind of came into that convention last week and really had some tough words for the folks there. I mean, he said, take a look at last year's March Madness basketball tournament. A quarter of all the schools that participated in that had graduation rates of less than 40%.
Wow.
And what he said to that crowd, very pointedly, was, you've got to do better. So what he proposed was, if you set a graduation rate that all these schools have to meet, and then if they don't meet that rate, they don't get to participate in postseason academics for a year, postseason athletics for a year.
Now, a lot of these schools bring in, millions and millions of dollars. Yep. Are there any real drastic changes that are going to be proposed?
Well, I think there's that, and I think there's also the idea that he suggested of, let some of these schools that do have good graduation rates, let the coaches work with students all the year round. Because right now there's rules that say coaches can't talk to the students outside of the season. And, it doesn't make sense. I mean, he said, if you're a computer scientist, you're not barred from the computer lab for several months out of the year. If you're a budding, violin virtuoso, you're not kept from seeing your mentor. You're treated differently. So let's set it up. If the schools are doing it right, then give them the chance to see their athletes, the coaches, to work with them.
Thank you so much, Peter. Guys, for more information on the College Bound Fund, head over to the website, foxprovidence.com. Thanks.
All right, guys, thanks very much. Time now.